The doors were locked. There was no light. There was no water. There was no food. There were no bathroom facilities. And we stood there for a long time before the train started to move. And as the train started to go, we realized that what we were seeing through a tiny, tiny crack in the wagon, in that wagon where the Germans used to transport their animals. But when they transported the animals, they were very kind to their animals. They gave them water and air and food, not for the Jewish women, not for the Jewish people. And I remember we stepped down, we were helped. Some of us had to jump down, and there were some prisoners helping us to go down. And I remember there was a terrible stench in Auschwitz. There was such a terrible stench in Auschwitz. And we thought it was snowing because it was early November and it was very cold. So we thought we would catch snowflakes and eat it. And then we realized there were no snowflakes. Those were ashes. So we were scared. So the rest of us would just stand up and we would just, trying to pinch our cheeks so we would be healthy looking. And we're pushed to the right into this huge building, huge barrack actually. And we were told to undress from head to bottom. And we were shaved from head to bottom. And we were pushed into that room just the way you saw it in a movie. And we stood there shaking and crying. We had no idea what was going to happen to us when the light came on and water came down. And I remember looking around. I stood right next to my mother, and all the people I worked with for the past few years that I knew. I couldn't recognize anyone. Because, when they shaved our hair, it was like they took away my identity. It wasn't me anymore. And I remember when we were put into the train, this time the boxcar, we could sit. And one of my girlfriends was laying across my lap, and she was running such a high fever. She was so sick. About an hour after we left Auschwitz, she broke up in scarlet fever. If she had broke up in scarlet fever while we were still in Auschwitz, they would have never let us go. After all, scarlet fever is infectious disease. And I remember that there was a little hole in back of my, in back of the car, and I was sticking my finger trying to scrape some snow. And to this day, she's in Canada, my friend Herta, and to this day she remembers I was trying to put icicles in her mouth. And she survived because as soon as the trip ended, and the doors open, and there on a podium, there on a platform stood Oskar Schindler. And I never forget what he looked like, with a green Tyrolean hat, with a feather in his head. He had a long green loden coat, and his boots, always boots shining like a mirror, always cigarette in his hand. And he said, you are finally here, and now I will take care of you. And take care of us he did. And I remember that Oskar Schindler always said, I'll be very upset if you make anything that's going to work. And since we really never made anything that could work, because the factory was never really put together. So he used to buy from other factories the things that we were supposed to make and send it as something that we made, because otherwise, when everybody would find out what he was really doing, he would be killed. You see, again and again and again, if it was not for Oskar Schindler, none of us would have survived. And because of that, we have to make sure that the world does not forget and that people will remember.